Back, it's Monday morning, back from the symposium in Manchester on Saturday. I travelled all day on Friday, the Eurostar, then the train up to Manchester, stayed 2 nights at the hotel in the centre of Manchester, travelled all day yesterday, train back to London, Eurostar, got home at 10 in the evening. So it was an extraordinary day, a long day of 8 or more speakers, and we overrun the time, and the discussion was exciting. The room was packed, the hall was packed, the big lecture hall was packed. The meeting so many people I know more or less, especially through watching their YouTube videos and through meeting them on Zoom meetings and so on and so forth in the last year or years was quite overwhelming. And every time I met somebody I knew, I was stuck trying to remember. Well, I remember immediately their face. I know them, but then I have to figure out what name they have. And while I'm looking at their face, I'm not very good at searching my brain for their name. So I kept having to say, sorry, who are you? Could you just say your name again? Oh, yes, of course. And always I kind of knew it, but I didn't dare to say it in case I'd be wrong, which is embarrassing. But anyway, I wanted now to react to just one thing which didn't upset me but worried me, which bothered me a bit, and actually it was there was just one talk about statistics. It was a brilliant talk by John O'Quigley, and he shows that the number of say bad events which Lucy Letby experienced in that time period is actually not surprising at all when you take account of the fact that somebody's got to have the most, and you take account of the fact that nurses vary, and so in particular they have different numbers of hours, they work different amount of time on the unit, but not only that, they come in close contact with different babies. There's heterogeneity, it's called in statistics. There's underlying variation, which is difficult to measure. It's pretty clear that Lucy Letby more frequently was given the care of more seriously ill babies than some of her colleagues. And whether that was deliberately or not, one of those colleagues who was working many hours would be the one who was most often in contact with the more seriously ill babies. And if you just take account of some modest amount of variation in those two things, the hours worked and the acuity of the babies you work with over the nurses, and you can estimate this variation from that spreadsheet, not from Lucy Letby's column, of course, but the rest of the spreadsheet, that what appears to be a random pattern of X's and blanks is not actually random at all. There's systematic differences in there between the nurses, and those systematic differences are partly due to the amount of time they work, how often they're on the unit, and partly due to the severity of the cases, the babies they get in close contact with. And those two amounts together can be estimated statistically, and they end up with I think John O'Quigley said, if we suppose that Lucy Letby is in the top 20%, then the amount of events which she experiences are just what you would expect for the average, the random person from the top 20%, right? It's a bit complicated. I think he needs to do some more videos about it, and I do too. Now, one thing he said really bothered me. Because I think it's misleading. Because he said, statistically, there was not a spike of deaths on the unit, and even though he said, I don't know where Ravi Jairam said this, but apparently Ravi Jairam has said there was a statistically significant spike. Maybe Ravi Jairam said there was a statistically significant association with Lucy Letby. Now, I don't think Dr. Jairam ever did any statistics himself, but we know that John Gibbs did know how to do simple medical statistics, and he talked about 2x2 tables and odds ratios and stuff, which shows that he dimly remembered some concepts of statistics from his medical school days, and he has said that there was a statistical association with Lucy Letby. In fact, we know that he has discussed with his colleague conspirators, the Gang of Seven, as one may call them nowadays, how to manipulate the statistics presented to the police in order to make the association with Lucy bigger. So if you put it like a higher level on what you call a suspicious event, then there are less of them, and the fewer there are, the less statistically surprising is any association with a particular nurse, because the numbers are smaller. On the other hand, if you categorize everything or almost everything as being suspicious or unexpected or whatever you want to call it, especially unexpected, an unexpected collapse of a stable baby, which is just a euphemism for saying you didn't expect it because you weren't looking closely enough, really. If you put the criterion very low, you will have a lot of events, but the association with any particular nurse will vanish as well. Dr. Gibbs is a smart guy, really. He has some intuition about how to manipulate statistics to make them look impressive to a policeman, and he succeeded. Now, I think there was a spike, and for instance, I imagine that John O'Quickly doesn't think it was wrong of the hospital to call in the RCPCH to investigate the spike. I think one thing the RCPCH did wrong was it focused on each baby separately, each death, for instance, and didn't see anything wrong in individual cases. But it did not investigate whether there was a cause of the spike, something constant going on which could explain the spike. Now, that's a hard call to make, and I think that still has to be done because, of course, a spike in deaths, and I believe there was one, is multi-causal. There can be a little bit of pure randomness, just so pure chance. I mean, suddenly you get a 1 in a million, a 1 in a million identical, 1 in a million pregnancies, identical triplets, which moreover is monochorionic. I mean, that's the 1 in a million, monochorionic, 1% triplets. That's an incredibly rare pregnancy, and those infants, the 3 infants, are incredibly vulnerable, are going to be incredibly vulnerable. When we look at all the other twins, and of which a large proportion, well, first of all, there's the basic number of twins and multiples in the indictments, in the spreadsheet, so to speak. And an incredible number of them are identical twins and are the identical triplets. and many of those identical twins are actually monochorionic. So those were extraordinarily vulnerable babies who needed very specialistic care at birth and from birth, and they should never have been, the mother had never been allowed, should never have given birth at the Countess of Chester. And even if that did happen through some emergency or bad luck or whatever, they should have been transferred out of there as fast as possible. They should have been transferred to Liverpool Women's or one of the other big Liverpool hospitals, and they might have had a better chance of survival there. I mean, they would have had a better chance of survival. I'm not saying they would have survived there, but they would more likely have survived there, at least like to full gestation. Many very premature babies are going to end up with brain damage, even if they make it to, still alive after the full 40 weeks. So it's mysterious to me that John quickly says that there was no spike, and he says it's not statistically significant. I think it is clearly statistically significant in the following sense. Suppose you expect 2 deaths a year. Suppose on average you have 2 deaths a year. So it was about 2 per year. Maybe it was 2.5. Occasionally there were 3. Almost never more. There were like 2 or 3 a year. Suppose you expect only 2 a year on average. And suppose they are completely random. Getting 8 in 12 months is then an extremely rare occurrence. You can do the calculations. You can do them on the internet by going to a Poisson distribution calculator app, and you will find out that under the Poisson distribution, which means complete randomness, which means, say, every day there's a chance of having a death. Every day the chance is the same. It doesn't change in time. It's not influenced by how many deaths have been recently, right? So every new day is a new day, and there's a chance of a death on that new day, and it is not influenced by what has happened before. So if you expect 2 deaths a year, then that's 2 divided by 365 per day, and we can calculate what is the chance that there would be in 1 year 8 or more, and most of that chance is the chance of there actually being 8. And what is that chance? It's about 1 in a million. It's 0, if I remember correctly. I think 1 in a million, or was it 1 in 10,000? 0.2 zeros and then a 1. That's 1 in a million. So that's statistically significant. Now, of course, which 12 months do you pick? And why do you pick 12 months? And do you just look for 12 months where there were a lot of deaths? If you let that process of completely random deaths with nothing changing at all, every day the same chance of 2 divided by 365 of a death, and not that chance not being influenced by how many there have been in the past, then you can do computer simulations or calculations to find out, for instance, what is the chance that in a, say, 10-year period, there would be a 12-month period with 8 or more deaths. I haven't done that calculation yet. I plan to do it later today by a little computer simulation, and I think it's probably pretty big. So purely through randomness, you can expect spikes from time to time. Not very often, the chance will be small of a big spike, but it's not impossible. Now, how do spikes occur? Well, they occur through dependence and through things changing in time. Now, for instance, if you're suddenly taking care of extremely vulnerable twins and triplets, you're going to have multiple deaths within a few days. especially if you don't have the skills, apparatus, and enough nurses and enough neonatologists to take care of every single one separately of that triplet or of those twins intensively. You're very likely going to get 2 or 3 deaths in a row. Now, the whole thing started with 2 deaths in a row of non-identical twins, but non-identical twins whose mother had a pretty rare complication, which we're only slowly beginning to learn more about, even now, partly thanks to Thirlwall. So the whole event, the whole disaster, the whole air crash disaster, which this was, Lucy Letby case, started with an unlucky coincidence of 2 deaths close together, and followed 2 weeks later by another one, if I remember correctly, and a paranoid doctor, Dr. Stephen Breary, overheard the junior doctors talking about the angel of death, Lucy Letby, who'd been there 3 times. Right, so the thing started with gossip about nice Lucy, not nice Lucy, who was seen to be by the ordinary people working on that ward, not initially not by the consultants, but was initially noticed by the other nurses and probably Lucy herself. I mean, Lucy must have been shocked to have experienced 3 deaths in a row, and several people said, or maybe it was Breary said, look, we've just had 3 deaths. Well, that's all we should expect this year, right? We've had our yearly quota. This is an extraordinarily stupid thing to say. But of course it could signal that something has gone on, something has changed. Now, I believe things had changed. Of course, there was actually Pseudomonas aeruginosa in the taps. Okay, well, that's actually not unusual in UK neonatal maternity units, of course. It is said, but the babies didn't die of that, and it takes 5 days before it actually kills a patient. Well, and anyway, the babies didn't die of the infections, or some of them died with sepsis, one died with pneumonia. Well, come off it. The ward, the situation, the physical situation on the neonatal unit must certainly have contributed some number of deaths to the many deaths, without there being a serial killer there at all. But I think more was going on, because the nurses have told Thirlwall, I think, or it's been reported, that they knew that they seemed to be having to care for much more seriously ill babies than they were used to. And if you look at the list of deaths and the characteristics of the babies, Thirlwall has got like 18 deaths. Of course, one of them was actually in the labour ward, so it doesn't count. And of course, some of them are of babies who died outside the hospital after a few days after being transferred. So these are the complications of the really big complications for any statistician analysing these data. But I believe the nurses' impression that they were dealing with more seriously ill babies than usual. And if you look at the list of the 18 deaths in Thirlwall, and if you just scan down that list and you look at the prematurity of those babies and the cause of death according to, like before the trial, the original cause of death, it's clear that those were touch and go cases, and many of them were doomed. I would like to see a careful statistical analysis done to figure out how many deaths would you have expected had those babies all been cared for in a level 3 ward, at a top level 3 hospital, with the right specialists available day and night, and with plenty of nurses and so on and so forth. What would have been a reasonable to expect outcome, just looking at the babies whom we know about, which are the ones given by Thirlwall and the other ones which turn up in the trial, who didn't die but allegedly attacked. How many of those babies could have been expected, for instance, at Liverpool Women's, to survive 2 weeks after birth? It should be possible to do that statistical analysis, and my guess is that it will be half of them. It will be close to the number of deaths which there actually were. It won't be statistically different from the number of deaths which there actually were. Now, those babies weren't in a level 3 unit. They were in what on paper was level 2, but in practice actually was level 1, and it still is level 1 to this day. And so it seems to me that there was a spike, and it seems to me that the nature of the spike, to some extent, was caused by external factors, namely the incoming stream of new babies. I think you will notice that when you look at for instance, look at the number of babies in the unit at any moment. The occupancy. Severely ill babies are going to tend to stay there longer. And so I believe we know that the incoming rate, so the rate of admissions, was normal. And it was probably told to the court even. We were not having more babies than usual. No, bloody hell, sorry for swearing. You weren't getting more babies than usual, but they were sicker and they were staying longer. The occupancy, the number of cots occupied, was bigger. I'd like to see the number of cots occupied per day split out over I think there are 3 subsections of the neonatal intensive care unit, like 3 little rooms, for the babies needing more or less care. I'd like to know the occupancy of the most severely ill babies, and I'd compare that with occupancy in other years. There's so much which could be done if we would only get good data, and if we would have, and of course we would need full cooperation with various organizations collecting data, like Embrace and so on. I mean, hospitals are collecting individual patient level data and sending it to Embrace and CQC and I don't know what all to do statistical analysis. And so those organizations have the data at the level of aggregation, i.e. not yet aggregated, such that we could, for instance, figure out what is the effect of being both low birth weight and severely premature. Of course, if you're severely premature, you're probably going to have low birth weight. But it could be that some babies have low birth weight even given their prematurity. Taking account of prematurity. So that the two together can have a stronger effect than either separately. And it probably does. It almost certainly does. Okay, so these are the things I'm thinking about today as I kind of try to take stock after an incredible day in Liverpool, in Manchester. Wonderful day. And so I can't really say if things are looking up for Lucy, because we heard it might well take 4 4 years or 5 years at the best. At the best guess is that it could take 5 years now to get Lucy Letby out of jail, and then she'll be more than the age of 40 already. And what does 5 years in jail do to you? Well, look at Lucia de Berg. Only spent 7 years in jail, I think, and only 5 of them actually convicted, right? Or 3 or something. I mean, you can make it appear like it was only a short time, but due to how she was treated in jail, she had a stroke. She was not treated properly. She ended up paralyzed on one side of her body, badly weakened. She managed to recover, and she died recently, aged 63. Age 63, and according to the newspapers, after a short illness, but actually it was not a short illness at all. It was actually a long and horrible illness, but that's not been made public yet. I know for sure, I feel for sure that her health was ruined by her experiences and led to her much too early death, which is a tragedy. Well, for her, of course, and for her family, for her husband, for her daughter, for her grandchildren. She should have looked forward to 10 or 20 more, not entirely joyful years, obviously, when you were in your 60s and 70s and 80s, as I can tell you. But she had a whole lot going for her, and it was taken away, from her by the Dutch legal system. Okay, so I think I will stop the recording now. I hope it has been done. We will see.